I'm a self-published author, and I figured it was about time that I made a video on this channel listing the pros and cons to self-publishing and why I decided to self-publish my books. I made this decision for a host of reasons. I am also in the process of pursuing traditional publishing. I am aiming to ultimately be a hybrid author and self-publish and traditionally publish different books for different reasons. But in this video, I wanted to share all of the pros and all of the cons that I have run into in the past 6 years of self-publishing my books. Just a little bit about me so you know where I'm coming at this from. I have self-published 6 books, 5 of them in the past 4 years. They are paranormal thrillers similar to Stranger Things that follow a group of 4 teenagers who have to fight this evil necromancer who is killing kids in their town and bringing the ghosts of dead kids back to life inside those kids' bodies. Very dark, filled with elements of horror, and I chose to self-publish them for the reasons that I'm going to talk about in this video. Right off the bat, I want to say that it doesn't matter what publishing option you choose, whether that is traditional publishing or self-publishing, you will be doing your own marketing. It is now a fact of the world that just because you're traditionally published doesn't mean that your publishing house will market the book for you. Sometimes they do, but publishers tend to market their A-list authors, the authors that they think are going to bring them the most money, and not put a lot of marketing time or budget behind authors that have not already proven themselves or are kind of B-list or C-list authors. This is objectively a smart business decision. Marketing costs money, and publishers aren't going to waste money marketing assets that have not already proven themselves to be profitable. And so either way, it's going to be up to you to do a lot of your own marketing. So don't choose traditional publishing under the delusion that your publisher will market for you. In most cases, they will not. So you're basically screwed either way and need to learn how to market on your own. But with that being said, let's get into the pros. Pro number 1 to self-publishing, and this is honestly the biggest reason that I chose to self-publish: you get more control over the entire process. This means you get to write what you want. You get to choose when you publish. You have control over your deadlines. You design your covers to look how you want. You choose the title to be what you want. You don't have editors telling you that you have to add a love triangle if you want that book to be published. Your book is yours, and you can decide what you want to do with it. I absolutely love having control over every step of my process. I love getting to choose my editors and select exactly which editor that I want to work with. I love getting suggestions from readers and editors, but being the person who makes the final decisions about that book. I love being able to set my own deadlines and set my own publishing schedule. I love that I get to set that around my readers instead of having to wait multiple years with a book that I've already finished, just sitting on that waiting to get it out to readers because it fits into a schedule. As soon as the book is done, as soon as I'm very happy with it, I can give it to my readers. I've never been a person that does particularly well being told what to do, and I really like that I get to keep my books as my own creative expression from the beginning to the end of the process. Just because you have more control doesn't mean that you can't get advice. You can get editors to give you advice, your beta readers give you advice. People can give you feedback on your book. You're just the one that gets to make the final call. You don't have anybody like pulling rank on you and making decisions about your book that you do not approve. Higher royalty rates. This one is also great. On average, a traditionally published author gets paid in advance, and then once they pay out their advance, they get a royalty cut of all the sales of the book. This royalty cut, on average, from what I've read, is typically in the 10 to 15% range. I'm sure it can be lower, I'm sure it can be higher, but on average, this is what I've read. For every sale of one of my ebooks, I make a 70% royalty. I believe for every sale of my paperbacks, I make a 60% royalty with printing deducted, so all the profit on top of printing that comes from a book sale, I'll make 60%. I make 25% on my audiobooks right now because I'm not exclusive with Audible, but I could make 40% if I decide to be exclusive with Audible. This opens possibilities like being profitable on Amazon or Facebook ads. This would be a lot harder if you were traditionally published because you just don't make as much for every sale, so you'd have to sell way more books in order to break even or make a profit on your ads. But for me, because I make such a big cut of each purchase of my ebooks especially, it's easier for me to be able to actually market on Facebook ads and Amazon ads and reach more readers. Pro number 3, you hold all the rights. This is also a huge deal because I get to make decisions about where and how I want my book to be distributed. If I have my audiobook, for example, and I decide that I want to make it free on YouTube and put ads after every single chapter break and allow people to listen to my audiobooks and then earn royalties whenever anyone listens to an ad, I can just do that. I don't need to get permission from anybody. That is my decision to make because I own all of the rights to my book. This becomes a lot more complicated when someone else owns those rights because it's no longer you who gets to make that executive decision. Just because you wrote it doesn't mean that you own it. And that is very important to remember when you are selling your book to another person to distribute it. It makes me mad that publishers will buy rights to books and not put money behind them to market them, and that they will just not do anything for them, expect the authors to do everything, but they own the book and they get more money than the authors do on the sales of those books. That is very frustrating. That's why I like self-publishing, because if I'm expected to do the marketing myself, I want to be able to hold on to the rights and I want to be able to hold on to the ownership. I don't want to be doing all of this marketing and work for a publisher to be making more money and being able to make decisions more than I can. Pro number 4, you can run your own promotions. As a self-published author, you have complete control over the pricing of your book. I have found this incredibly valuable because I have full autonomy and I'm allowed to choose when I want to make the book free for a period or when I want to discount the books for a period. I can leverage pricing control as a marketing tool, and this has opened a lot of doors for me. I've been able to run free promotions where I've given away thousands of copies of my book 1, which has led to many readers funneling into books 2, 3, 4, 5 in my series. And I wouldn't have this control if I were traditionally published. Pro 5, and this is kind of connected to the previous one, is that I control all of my own pricing. If I want to charge $4.99 for my ebook, I can. If I want to charge $5.99 for my ebook, I can. If I want to go and see what all of the ebooks are selling for in the Kindle market right now, I can, and then price my book accordingly. If I wanted to take advantage of things like perma-free book 1 and make my book completely free and bank on those readers wanting to pay for book 2, 3, 4, 5 in the series, I would have the freedom to do that. I can make these strategy decisions for myself. If I were traditionally published, I couldn't just go and make my book 1 free because the publisher wouldn't allow that. There's a whole bunch of psychology wrapped up in this. Like, some people say that it's better to price your ebooks a little higher because it tells readers that they should expect a quality product. Some people have found a lot of success, especially in the early days of Kindle, making their book 1 free and then having readers pay to read the rest of the books in the series. All of these choices become yours when you self-publish. The 6th big pro is I can revise as much as I want to. If I find a typo in my book, I can export my file and re-upload it. If I feel like my chapter 1 is really slow and I want to rewrite it and try to hook readers in faster, I can rewrite it, re-upload it, and that will be the version of the book. I literally rewrote the first half of my book 1 in my published series last fall, like 3 years after it was published. I re-uploaded it and I published it, and that is now just the version of the book that exists. It's really nice to be able to do this in a hassle-free way because it also means that I can have links at the end of my books that lead readers to different things. I have QR codes in my paperbacks that readers can scan to visit my website, to visit my mailing list, to go to the next book in the series, and I can just export and re-upload and update those links whenever I want to. I use a platform for my QR codes that lets me update the link that's attached to every QR code. So once the book is published with that code, I don't have to I won't have a bunch of dead QR codes published in different paperbacks. So that is a decision I made because of that. But this is really, really great because it just lets me customize my book to try to get people onto my mailing list and push people into the next book. Pro number 7, which I briefly touched on earlier, but I think deserves to be its own pro, is you can run ads and make a return. It's nearly impossible to make a profit when running Facebook or Amazon ads if you're traditionally published, just because you make such a small royalty. If I'm making 70% on every sale of an ebook, I can sell fewer books in order to make back the money that I spend on advertising. It is already a challenge enough to be able to make a Facebook ad profitable. When you do make this kind of royalty, it would be virtually impossible if you made less. So running ads opens you up to a host of new opportunities for marketing. Certain readers hang out on different platforms, but I have found marketing on Facebook to be immensely helpful in trying to get my book out there. Another pro is that self-publishing can be cheap. This is going to directly contradict one of the cons that I talk about later, but all you really need to self-publish a book is your book, your manuscript. You can format it with a tool that like you already have. You can format on Word, you can format on Scrivener. Then you just need an image to create a cover in some way. You slap it on there and you upload it. That's all you have to do, and then you can self-publish your book. There doesn't have to be a big cost burden, so it can be cheap. I would argue that it does take some upfront investment to create a quality product. However, it doesn't have to. Finally, self-publishing is fast. You can publish as many books as fast as you want to when you self-publish. I think the limit is 3 books a day, but I have never met somebody who can publish more than 3 books a day unless they're like little journals or picture books or whatever. But actual fiction books, I don't see anyone publishing 3 books a day. This is great because if you write really fast and you have a voracious readership, you can feed that readership as much as you want to. You're not going to have publishers that put you on a schedule or say you can't publish or say that they'll only publish the first 2 books in your series and not the other ones. You get to make those decisions and you can publish as much as you want. Now we move on to the cons. The first major con of self-publishing I want to talk about is that it's expensive. There is more upfront cost associated with self-publishing than there is with traditional publishing, because you need to hire your own editor, you have to design your own cover, you have to format the book. You don't have to pay for any of these things, but if you invest in things like a good editor and a strong cover, your book will be a more professional product and it is more likely to do well. I strongly believe that it is every author's responsibility when publishing a book to make that book as strong and professional as they possibly can with what is available to them. So in some cases, this can look like a bigger upfront investment than traditional publishing, because in traditional publishing, they will pay for things like formatting and a cover and editing for you. But you don't get to control who your cover designer is and what your cover looks like and who your editor is. So it can be really great, but it can also be really crappy. The second con is you have to do so many jobs. Self-publishing a book is running a business. You have to not only write the book that appeals to readers, but you also have to manage your freelancers and make sure your cover looks great and manage your formatting and make sure that your product is good and then market your book, connect with readers. You have to wear so many hats that you can't just write a book and then send it off and then expect everything is going to be done for you. You are the one that not only has to sell your book, because that's a net neutral, you have to do that regardless of whether you self-publish, but you also have to do all of the design and creation of the product. You have to run the promotions. You have to set the pricing. You have to innovate and think of new ways to do things. You have to be the person who is actively funneling readers towards your books because nobody else is doing it for you. This takes a lot of time. It also takes away time that you could be writing. And when you traditionally publish, you hand over a lot of that to your traditional publisher. They might not do a very good job and they might not do it the way that you want to do it, but they're gonna do something, presumably. The third con is that there is a steep learning curve to self-publishing. There are so many things that go into self-publishing a book, and it takes a lot of time to learn those things. I know leagues more about self-publishing now than I did when I first started. And when I first started, I was listening to the podcasts and I was reading books. But actually publishing and being out there and doing this taught me so much more than reading about it and trying to prepare for it. It takes a lot of time, and there's just no way around that, because there's literally no one to stop you from going out there and falling on your face. It is up to you whether or not your book is successful or not. The fourth con is that finding good freelancers can be hard. There's no guarantee when you start working with a freelancer that they're going to know what they're doing. You can hire an editor and think that they're going to be great, and then they just give you really useless feedback and charge you $2,000, and that was your entire budget for editing, and now you have no idea what to do. You can hire a cover designer and they can just give you a really, really gross cover, even though their stuff in their portfolio looked nice and they looked like they knew what they were doing, but the cover that they give you is just total crap. One thing I've found helpful when selecting freelancers to work on my books is I've gone into the acknowledgement sections of books that I liked that were well done, make sure that they're self-published books, and see who they worked with. A lot of people will thank their cover designer or their editor, go in and see who those people are, and then reach out to them. One thing that you can do to test people like line editors and copy editors is ask them to edit a sample. It is very standard for line editors to edit a sample of your work before you hire them, and you can see exactly what kind of things they pay attention to. Con number 5 is it's harder to get stocked in bookstores. You might have heard that, Ingram Spark makes it possible to get your books stocked in bookstores and libraries. And while yes, that's in theory true, bookstores can order books from Ingram Spark. They very often don't, and they only order books from Ingram Spark if they're not only heavily discounted, but if you allow returns. I put my books up on Ingram Spark and was kind of expecting bookstores to just stock them on their own, but obviously this is not what happened. I went through a kick where I really wanted to be stocked in indie bookstores, so I would reach out to indie bookstores in my area and I would ask them if they would carry my book. And a lot of times that they would say yes and they'd order some copies of my book, but I had to put them at the standard retail 55% discount price in order for the bookstores to agree to stock it. And then I also had to allow returns. So what ended up happening is I would email these bookstores, they'd say they'd stock my book, they bought a bunch of copies of my book to stock. Then after a couple of months, those book copies didn't sell, and then they would return the books to me, and then I got slapped with a huge invoice because I had to pay for the printing of all of the books that bookstore bought and stocked. So it ended up being really expensive for me. I got hit with a bunch of bills and then all of these books that I didn't really want. I just had these boxes of books showing up on my doorstep, and then I get invoiced. And so it was kind of frustrating and discouraging because the indie bookstores weren't selling copies of my book. And obviously that has to do with my marketing. My marketing wasn't reaching enough people on social media to make them want to go out and buy my book. But also it's frustrating when you're only in 4 stores and after a couple of months they just return your books. So it is objectively harder to get stocked in bookstores. I also reached out to a lot of Barnes & Nobles begging for them to stock my book. None of them would. I really think you will see some videos on TikTok of people that get their books, self-published books, stocked in Barnes & Noble, but I really think that they will only stock you if you're a TikTok viral sensation or you have a giant readership, which makes sense, and that's a smart business decision, but it is something for us to keep in mind. The 6th con, and this is really not something I care about at all, but I figured I'd throw it on this list, is that there can be a stigma. People will hear that you're self-published and they won't think that you're a legitimately published author. To that I say, A, who gives a crap what other people think? But B, the ultimate goal of every published book is to reach readers, affect readers, and have readers want to buy that book. My goal as an author is not to gain the approval of the publishing gatekeepers that sit all high and mighty on their high horses and tell me that I'm only a legitimate author if I have traditionally published my books. My goal is to write stories that affect people who buy books and make the people who buy books want to read my stories. So as long as I'm reaching readers directly and successfully doing that, I am proud and happy. You will always get annoying people who are like, well, you're not a real published author. But whenever I get that, I just roll my eyes because the only thing that matters to me is my readers' experience reading my book. And also I've won some pretty cool awards with my books that are legitimate awards. I've won awards with my books that have made agents, when they've heard that I won that award, go oh my god, that's a huge deal. That's so impressive. So that also feels pretty good. The 7th con is that you can't really access a lot of the big traditionally publishing marketing things like Barnes & Noble, like the New York Times bestseller list. There are really only a limited number of marketing tactics available to you. A lot of traditionally published books don't access these either. The New York Times bestseller lists and big Barnes & Noble promotions are really reserved for those big name authors who the publishing house has decided that they love, who they're going to promote, and there are tons of traditionally published authors who don't get the same kind of push, who don't make it on the New York Times bestseller list, and who don't get the special Barnes & Noble rollout treatment that others do. However, if you're traditionally published, even if you're not a huge title, Barnes & Noble will probably still stock you, and the New York Times bestseller list is open to you. There are self-published books that end up on the USA Today bestseller list. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying in general, this is something that's a lot harder to achieve as a self-published author. Another con is without big publisher money and effort, you are more susceptible to needing to write to market or to the TikTok algorithm. Big publisher budgets can push more niche books to the top of New York Times bestseller lists and push them out to broader audiences. If you write a very niche book that doesn't have really strong social media hooks or isn't written to a market that is chomping at the bit for another book like that, it will be harder for you to gain traction as a self-published author. Again, many traditionally published authors do not get the money and effort from the traditional publishing houses. As a self-published author, you definitely are not getting any effort or money from any publishing houses. And so it's more important that you have a publishing plan, you figure out who the market is for your book and where your audience lives, and then figure out how to market your book on that platform. And finally, and I'm pretty sure this is kind of a neutral thing, like this is the case for both traditionally published authors and self-published authors, but you need to actively promote your backlist in order to keep people coming back to it. In most cases, self-publishing is not just like you throw a book out there and you forget about it and it keeps bringing money back to you years and years and years later. You have to continuously promote your backlist, whether that is through promotions, like email marketing promotions, whether that's through ads, whether that's through short form videos on social media platforms. You have to be the engine that drives people back, and if you stop being an engine, then your profit is going to dwindle. All in all, self-publishing is extremely involved, but I can confidently say that I am so happy I made the decision to self-publish. I have learned so much. I have pushed myself out of my comfort zone and learned how to talk to readers. I have learned how to write books that my readers actually want to read. I am so proud to say that I have had full control over my publishing process, and that the book that I publish and share with my readers is the exact version of the book that I wanted to publish, that I had in my head. But just because this decision has been great for me doesn't mean necessarily that it will also be great for you. So I just wanted to give you a ton of information to help you think about it and be able to think about whether these pros outweigh the cons like they did in my situation, or whether pursuing a different publishing path would be better for you. But it is really important to keep in mind that either way, you will have to shoulder the marketing burden for your book. It is just a fact of the world that we live in that authors are expected to be on social media, create their own personal brands, and talk to readers directly and reach readers directly. And so I decided that if I'm going to be doing all of that work anyway, I really want to be doing that work for myself, unless the publisher can offer me something that is different than something that I would be able to get myself. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful to you. If you have a second, I'd be super grateful if you could like it and also subscribe to my channel. My name is Claire Fraze, and I'm an award-winning author who makes videos sharing actionable writing tips that helped me make my own writing better. I am the author of the 5-book paranormal thriller They Stay series, which won the grand prize at the 2023 Writer's Digest Self-Published Book Awards. And I love sharing self-publishing tips and things that I've learned over the past 4 years of self-publishing that have really helped me level up my business. Did I miss anything on this list? Are there pros that I didn't include or cons that I didn't include? Let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from members of the community what their experience with self-publishing has been. I hope you have a fantastic week, everyone, and as always, happy writing.